Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the webinar. I'm Ragalata Reddy, Assistant Professor of English, Hyderabad, Telangana, and I cordially invite you all to this e-webinar on social responsibility of a writer, organized by ISPEL. ISPEL stands for Indian Society for the Promotion of Language and Literature, which is established in September 2020 by our Honorable Founder and General Secretary, none other than our Dr. Ghanshyam sir. ISPEL facilitates the platform for deliberations on English language and literature across the world. Initially, it began with the Indian context and emerging into global context within a period of 5 months. At the outset, I would express my earnest thanks to the ISPEL team for offering me the moderator position. Today's deliberation is all about the social responsibility of a writer. I am privileged to introduce the Master of Ceremonies, Dr. Bushra Wadud, is an assistant professor in the Department of English at Taiba University, Medina, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Earlier, she has been associated with some prestigious colleges like Integral University, AIET, AIPR, and GITM in Lucknow. She had brief association with Baba Bhimrao Ambedkar University, a central university where she provided rigorous training to a whole stream of students belonging to minority category, as university has its own coaching center for their personality development. Here, she was concerned with problems related to communication skills, pronunciation, intonation, etiquette, and body language. She has trained more than 5,500 students so far, who held top-notch positions in government as well as private sectors. The topic of research is the assertion of feminist sensibility in the short fiction of Ismat Chugtai. Her specialization in the field of research is feminist literary criticism, especially gyno criticism, gender bias, and écriture féminine. Her honors include the Junior Research Fellowship sponsored by University Grants Commission, UGC. Her expertise lies in the areas like communication, grammar, stylistics, phonetics, and phonology. The subjects that she is concerned with are professional communication and English language and grammar. Over to you, ma'am. Dr. Bushra Wadud, ma'am.
Dr. Ragulata for the warm introduction. Today we are going to have a deliberation on a topic that is very relevant. In an age where everybody is talking about I, me, myself, Indian Society for the Promotion of English Language and Literature has come up with a topic, and we are going to have this discussion on the topic social responsibility of a writer. Today, it's our pleasure that we do have a Turkish writer with us. She is a keynote speaker. Let me introduce her. Muhsine Arda. Muhsine Arda is a Turkish poet, novelist, and essayist. Earlier, she used to work at New York University. After leaving her teaching position there in 1997, Arda moved back to her hometown, Bursa, Turkey, where she is currently living. Muhsine's works has been extensively published in Turkey, including 5 volumes of poetry, short stories, essays, and 2 novels. Many of her poems have been translated into other languages as well, and have appeared in international literary publications. She is a staunch advocate of women's rights, and her feminist viewpoint is reflected in much of her writing, where she also addresses some sensitive issues which we call taboo subjects related to women's sexuality, physical disability, and suicide. With this introduction, let me invite our keynote speaker, Muhsine Arda. Welcome, ma'am.
I thank you for this wonderful introduction, and I thank Isabel for inviting me to have this talk. Well, the subject is the responsibility of a writer towards society. This is a subject which has been debated all over the world in every culture. It's a very tricky subject. Every answer is going to be debatable unless we define the word writer. Who is a writer? Anybody who writes something down? Is a secretary a writer? Is a student who jots down the teacher saying a writer? The answer is no. Is a writer somebody who writes about subjects that based on his or her knowledge? No. We classify these people's writing as academic. What is the definition of a writer in the literary world? That is the important question for us. A fiction writer is someone who tells a made-up story with imaginary characters in a short story, novella, novel. A fiction writer is someone who writes about any obligation to write. These writers start with an urge to write. This urge, after a while, becomes a self-imposed obligation. An obligation which keeps writers at the table with a pen and pencil or in front of a computer. An obligation which keeps writers confined to a room while others enjoy themselves on holidays, at the beach, or chatting with friends at a cafe. Even if this is a self-imposed obligation, are there some ethical issues or codes which writers have to obey? Towards themselves, towards society? Does a fiction writer have any moral responsibility? The issue of moral responsibility in this case, what someone writes, is a philosophical puzzle. Most proposed solutions to this problem have attempted to establish that humans have free will. Yet, the decisions writers make are the result of their desires, personal circumstances, past experiences, upbringing, and even their genetic makeup. If this is true, then a person's actions may ultimately be no more than the result of free will than his eye color. The concept of moral responsibility really needs a philosophical approach and scholarly knowledge. Let's leave this argument to the philosophers. Instead, I will try to talk about this subject from my own perspective. All fiction writers should ideally be moral in terms of their cultural, ethical, and legal systems. So I say, yes, a fiction writer must be responsible to society. But first of all, a writer must be responsible to himself or herself. If a writer chooses to write a piece only for aesthetic pleasure, in this case, she or he has no responsibility. When there are so many problems affecting people's lives, like intolerance, racism, bigotry, sexism, oppression, who will tackle these issues? Your answer can be the government or the educational system. For centuries, history shows us again and again that in some parts of the world, these institutions are not enough. In some cases, actually, they are the cause of the problems. We also know that finding a solution to a problem starts with awareness. If you haven't tasted sugar, you will never crave it. Likewise, if you never experienced freedom, democracy, human rights, animal rights, or never even heard of them, how will you try to establish these rights? This is the point where utilitarianism comes in. What is utilitarianism? It is defined as a system of ethics based on the premise that something's value can be measured by its usefulness. What is a book's usefulness? To explore this subject, we have to discuss some other aspects. Let me ask you some more questions. What do we write about? We write about love, happiness, sorrow, unfairness, injustice, poverty, failure, oppression, struggle, and stress. A good writer is an excellent observer, an observer who digests these observations and internalizes them. If the observer communicates the observations right away, she or he is a reporter. If that observation transforms into interpretation, the subject of a new fiction book is born. The seed is planted in the brain. As in nature, growing and maturing takes time. When a seed is planted in soil, the outcome is no longer a seed, but a flower, plant, or vegetable, or a tree. Likewise, when an observation matures in the brain of a writer, the outcome is a story or novel. Why do we write? We write to communicate with readers. We write to convey a message, to share personal observations, to create awareness of a subject, to leave a legacy, to transfer some historical knowledge to the readers, to convey traditions to the young generations, to say something that is important for us, positive or negative, to transmit our ideas. We keep writing. If what is written is not meaningful to the reader and society, what is the point of writing? If there's no effect, a positive effect or knowledge, there's no use writing those novels. In my opinion, a fiction writer is a self-appointed social worker who tries to establish awareness of one or several issues. From this point of view, he is responsible to society. His personal responsibility to himself is honesty. This honesty is also vital for the society, of course. I believe that most of the well-known writers wrote about some issues with that in mind. Let's remember a few great literary works. Charles Dickens' historical novel, A Tale of Two Cities, gives us information about life and ideas of two cities, London and Paris. It describes opposites, wisdom versus foolishness, hope versus despair, and many more opposite issues. He depicts a very important historical period. He felt responsible that we should learn about this period. Tolstoy was a great observer of his society. In the novel Anna Karenina, he conveyed the themes of hypocrisy, jealousy, faith, fidelity, family, marriage, society, progress, carnal desire, passion, and the contrast between urban and rural lifestyles. Tolstoy didn't judge Anna Karenina, her husband, or Count Vronsky. He just let us see the results of their actions. American writer Alice Walker wrote The Color Purple. She won many awards for her book and gave a sad but eye-opening insight into the lives of Black women in the United States. This was her social responsibility, she felt. James Mitchenash, another American writer, was another great observer and researcher. He wrote more than 40 books, most of which were lengthy family sagas. I must say that I have read most of them. These sagas cover the lives of many generations in various countries and geographies. They also incorporate detailed history. Through fiction, this American writer made foreign environments accessible to Americans and to many other readers around the world. Actually, his books are classified as fictional documentaries. Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale is fiction. Wow, what a fiction. She conveys her very disturbing fears about the future to her readers and makes them think. Amitav Ghosh, as you know, the famous Indian writer, writes ambitiously about national and international characters, particularly about the people of India and Southeast Asia. For example, in his novel The Glass Palace, he tells the struggles that have shaped Burma, India, and Malaysia through the stories of a few families. He explains various facets of the colonial period, the rise of timber and rubber plantations, and the economic fall of Burma, and as well as the moral issues of the British Army and the effects of the Second World War. There are many more examples in literature of writers who felt they have a responsibility towards society. I belong to this group. I always write from this perspective. I have something to say to my readers. I have this urge to expose a subject or a problem. I feel obliged to increase awareness of a specific issue. This is my responsibility towards society, regardless of whether it's an essay, poem, or novel. And of course, I have to write objectively without being judgmental. I specifically wrote my 2 novels with this in my mind. I wanted to raise awareness of 2 subjects which I thought haven't been properly addressed in literature. My first novel's title is The Tears of Suicide. As you can easily imagine from the title, this novel is about suicide. What made me write this book is the question I'm asked very often. Let me tell you the incident which made me write it. I was a freelance English tutor for almost 20 years. Most of my students were adults, doctors, businessmen, even CEOs. One of them was a very well-known general manager of a very big company. He was a very good student, intelligent and hardworking. He did all his homework, read the books I gave him. He summarized them for me. At one point, I gave him a specific book to read. In the next lesson, when I asked about that book, he told me that he was very busy and so jokingly, I gave him another 2 books and said, as a punishment this weekend, you have to read 3 books. He smiled and accepted the extra books, and by saying, your wish is my command, teacher. But the next lesson, he told me he only had time to read 2 books. I continued to give him new books to read. He read the last books, but never that original one. The scenario continued for a few weeks, for a few lessons. I started to have several suspicions about the book he was avoiding. Maybe he lost it or didn't like the writer or the story. Maybe I shouldn't insist that he read that book. In the next lesson, I told him that maybe that book was cursed in some way, so give it back to me. I will give you another book instead, I said. He opened his briefcase, took out the book and handed it to me. While I was putting it on my bookshelf, I heard a sigh from behind me. Spontaneously, I looked at the book I was holding. On its cover, there was a drawing of a man hanging from a tree. I shuddered. An unpleasant idea came to my mind. I put the book on the shelf and grabbed another one and gave it to him. I sat down and just looked at him. Out of the blue, I asked, who in your family committed suicide? There was a silence that was palpable. All the color drained from his face. And he whispered, my sister. Then his face turned red, and he suddenly started crying very heavily. I had a box of Kleenex in my classroom. Pushing it gently towards him, I left the room. 15 minutes later, I came back with 2 cups of coffee and a pack of cigarettes. As I said, if you want to share it, I will listen. Well, it turned out to be a very sad story. All this happened when he was 7 years old. He was from Eastern Turkey and had a very conservative family. His sister fell in love with a boy, but the family decided to marry her to someone else and announced the engagement. Finding no solution, she hanged herself, and he found her. Committing suicide was a kind of social crime in that part of Turkey, a taint that meant no one would ever marry into that family again. So that night the family gathered a few belongings in a hurry and left the town with his sister's body wrapped in a carpet. He was told not to talk to anyone about this and that he must forget that he ever had a sister. During the long drive, he remembers waking up in his mother's in his mother's arms, that who was crying also, and seeing his father and uncle digging a hole in the distance. But his mother quickly buried his head under her shawl. 2 or 3 days later, they arrived at their new home in Istanbul. A father, a mother, and 2 sons. Nobody talked about the sister anymore. He was so traumatized that he never talked about the incident ever again. He told me that even his wife and his children, after maybe 40 years, don't know anything about it. I was the only person that he ever told this family secret to. I told him his secret was safe with me. What a tragedy. The book's cover had opened up an old wound. Remembering it was extremely sad for him. But getting it off his chest, talking about it, and crying was comforting nevertheless. Then I began to think about this subject, suicide. This incident also made me remember a lot of past events and brought back some bad memories. When I was 16 years old, I was a dorm student in Istanbul. One September, after a long summer holiday, it was lovely to see friends again and talk about our holidays. But a friend from distant city, Muğla, had not returned. We were wondering and asking each other and teachers about her. Nobody knew anything. But a secret doesn't stay a secret for long. The truth was revealed after a while. Memnune, that was her name, had died. She was dead. She committed suicide by drinking some poisonous agricultural pesticides. She killed herself because her father forced her into a marriage with a rich man who was old enough to be her grandpa. So, 2 nights before her wedding night, she put on her wedding gown and drank the poison. This was the first suicide that touched me personally. Then, that year, a student 2 years older than us jumped out of the window of our dormitory. Luckily, she fell on a tree and only broke a few bones, and she survived. Life went on for me. Suicide was pushed into the back of my mind until 1982, when I was in Munich, Germany. Just a few before Christmas, an elderly woman jumped under the train right in front of me. I found myself hugging, crying, and clinging to a woman I didn't know at all. She was also in panic. After some time, the police invited all of us into the station's waiting room. We were offered coffee and told that she had survived and was taken to the hospital. But we knew that that was impossible. The next day's news announced she was dead. The local community organizations offered us free consultations. I went to a few of them, but I still remember her scream of life as she jumped to her death. A brain of a person is an incredible organ. As impossible as it might seem, I forgot about this incident and continued my life. Throughout the years, I have heard about many more suicides: bankrupt businessmen, failed students, unhappy women, many writers and poets. Whoever found life unbearable chose to ease the way out and committed suicide. But it wasn't easy for their loved ones. They were left to deal with the consequences with grieving. In some religions, suicide breaks God's commandment and is a big sin. It can also be an embarrassment for the family. The dead are denied the religious burial rites in some countries. In some countries also, like England, for example, it was a crime. Until the 20th century, if the person didn't die after attempting suicide, they were punished. Guilt is the unbearable effect on the family members. What if? This praise that nags their brain. What if I had done this? What if I hadn't done this? Could I have saved him or her? Explaining the unexplainable to insensitive, curious people is a task that falls on the survivors. A task wrapped in sorrow, guilt, and secret shame. It's a task that should be done and forgotten as quickly as possible, believe me. But its pain, no matter how deeply buried, can surface suddenly to hurt you and sadden you as if just happened. Like in many cases of, in case of my student. So I thought it's time to write about this subject. Unfortunately, suicide is a reality of life and happens all around us, in every culture and every level of society. Perhaps more frequently in some than others. I began to read about the subject. Suicide was mentioned a lot in novels and films. In general, it was described as an event, how it was done, what the reason was. Then the story continued in another direction. I also read a lot of scientific explanations trying to answer the question why. But I didn't find any work, fiction or non-fiction, that discussed the effects of suicide on relatives and friends. In fictional work, if it was talked about, the nuclear family was generally the focus and generally just one person, the broken-hearted mother or father, and sometimes a sibling or a lover. I thought, if I was aware of this subject, I must do something about this unspoken taboo. I had a burning desire to raise awareness and break the silence. Readers should understand that they are not alone. So, as I said at the beginning of my speech, it became my obligation, my responsibility. And because it was such a heavy subject, it took me more than 7 years to finish writing it. It's a sad subject. Since then, I have had very positive feedback. The first was actually just before its publication. It was a bizarre coincidence. While I was in the process of writing, I got a letter from my friend Mariana. She wrote that her mother died, and afterwards, her unmarried sister, who was taking care of the mother, fell into a severe depression and committed suicide and died. While my friend was dealing with these tragic events, her own family fell apart. After getting divorced, she found herself living alone. Her kids were grown up and living in another country. At that time, I sent her a letter offering my condolences. In addition, I wrote something to give her the courage to go on. I was afraid she might commit suicide too. I don't really remember what I wrote. Another 2 years passed. Out of the blue, I got another letter from Mariana. In her letter, she thanked me for saving her life. Just as I had feared, she got into a severe depression and decided to commit suicide. She said that she planned it carefully, but before she acted on her solution and decision, she remembered how sad it was to clear out of her mother's and sister's drawers and reading their accumulated papers and letters. Not to give the same horrible task to her sons, she decided to clear her desk and drawers before committing suicide. In the process, a letter fell out. It was an unopened letter from me. For some reason, she opened the envelope and started reading it. She started crying. She wrote that she didn't remember how long she cried or how many times she read my letter. After she cried her eyes out, she finally got up, went to her medicine cabinet, and took out the sleeping pills she was saving for her final night. She opened the bottle, threw all them into the toilet, and flushed it. She got her life back. She wrote that since then she was volunteering at an orphanage and made new friends and goes traveling with them. She was enjoying life again. She thanked me for helping her find in life again. I have no idea what I had written, but in any case, I was very happy that I wrote something that had this wonderful effect. So I dedicated my novel to Mariana, thanking for choosing life. So many readers have spoken to me and written to thank me for writing about this subject. Some people told me about their loved ones who committed suicide, that they were not able to talk to anyone else. In this novel, I tried an unusual approach. I wrote in the first person, the dead person who was stuck in limbo after his suicide. I wrote his I wish I hadn't done that sentences. The critics and readers found it very unusual and very effective. Receiving such positive response to my first novel gave me courage to write my second. In Beşi Bir Yerde, my second novel, I addressed another problematic issue, the lives of mothers with disabled children. Again, I felt the desire and responsibility to raise awareness of this topic. There are a lot of books written about the lives of disabled people, their struggle, failures, and successes. But never had I read a novel about the life of a mother who struggles with many different problems because of her child is disabled. People usually notice the disabled people and his or her disabilities. Feeling sorry for them is the first impulse. Unfortunately, in extreme cases, disgust and even hate towards them happens. We tend to forget about them as long as they are not living next door to us. Even if the noise, banging and screaming that we complain about finally cease, we forget about them again. It is somebody else's problem, their problem, not ours. Disability isn't only a medical system. It's a social cultural problem too. In many cultures, disability is considered a curse, an illness, a reason to feel shameful. For those reasons, disabled children were hidden away from the public eye. In some extreme cases, they were even killed. In recent history, Hitler and his Nazis killed thousands of disabled children and adults. Some people think that they are a burden on the medical system, a financial drain on the family budget and on society. For their families, these children are a responsibility, a source of continuous worry, a burden on the budget. But before all these adjectives, for mothers, they are unconditionally loved daughters and sons. For fathers, we see a different story. A small percentage of them love their kids, but most fathers, unfortunately, they are embarrassing, unwanted, hated kids. Most fathers walk out of the marriage, leaving mothers to struggle alone. We look at them in the streets at shopping malls. Do we really look at them? Do we really see them? Do we ever think about these mothers? How they feel about being with a disabled child, and how do they feel when people keep staring at their kids? How do they deal with being a non-stop caregiver? Do they dream about their future? Every neighborhood is home for disabled people. Some of us have neighbors with disabled kids. I was one of those people. One of my childhood friends was a crippled boy with a minor disability. disability. Nevertheless, he was called very unkind names during our games. Once, when he cheated in a game, I called him cripple too. Unfortunately, or very fortunately, my father hurt me. Oh boy, oh boy. Although I was just 7 years old, I was given a long lecture about being unkind, insensitive, and a downright uncaring bad person. I was made to feel very guilty. Although I apologized to my friend, I was also punished. I wasn't allowed to play outside for a week. My mother and father taught me to be kind towards disabled people and never to discriminate against them and to help in any way possible. Even though I grew up in this way, I never thought deeply about the problems of these mothers. One day, I had gone to visit a friend in a very nice compound. The weather was warm and pleasant, and my friend was sitting in the garden with her neighbors. At one point, I joined them, of course. At one point, at a distance, I saw a woman hugging in the staircase. The woman was screaming, "No, no, don't do it." My first thought was that the man was harassing the woman. On impulse, I stood up, but somebody tugged on my dress and made me sit down again. At that moment, I saw them fall down together. Somebody helped them get up. I asked my friend who they were. It turned out that they were a mother and her severely disabled 18 years old son. He was resisting going back inside the apartment. She was trying to push him inside. Unfortunately, he was physically far stronger than his mother. Some of the women I was sitting with were pitying the woman. Others were saying that they were actually a nuisance for the building because the boy was always screaming and banging something regardless of the time of the day. I left the garden with a very heavy heart that day. That night, I decided to write a novel about these mothers. I felt responsible for writing about it. I thought really it was my self-appointed mission to write about this subject. So a long process started, reading medical papers about disabilities, interviewing mothers with disabled kids. My book was going to be fiction, but the subject was very delicate. As a writer, my responsibility was not to provide any false information, idea, or personal opinion. It took me 6 years to write this novel. After the third year of researching, I decided to give up the idea. One reason came from me. This was a very sad subject, and the more I became aware of the problems, the more upset I became. Another reason came from my friends. When they learned what I was working on, they started advising me, write this, write that, and started telling me about their friends' disabled children. This infuriated me. If it was going to be my book, it should convey my ideas. It shouldn't be any individual's biography. If it is a fiction, it should be a story about my imaginary characters. However, the most important reason I nearly stopped writing was the mothers that I was interviewing. All of them were eager to tell me how their children were progressing. They talked about the problems they are facing generally, but most of them became very quiet when I asked about their own feelings. Asking a disabled child's mother about her own feelings is a very difficult task. It required a lot of courage. For me, the bravery was asking such personal questions. For them, the bravery was getting in touch with their own feelings. It was obvious that most of them never thought about their own feelings, let alone talk about them with an outsider. Many of them thought that that would be betraying their children. Most of them accepted being an invisible caregiver, but some of them were just the opposite and became very loud advocates of being a blessed mother. They thought the Almighty had chosen them to be the guardian of a disabled angel. Out of the 50, 60 mothers I interviewed, only three mothers spoke to me honestly, and always we were both in tears. So I decided to read a lot of psychology books about acceptance and denial. After a year's break from writing, I began to imagine myself giving birth and becoming the mother of a child with a specific disability. I imagined the life that lay ahead. Then I imagined I was the mother of a child with another different disability and lived that scenario too. I realized then that it was impossible to convey my thoughts through the story of just one mother and one child. So I decided I should write about 5 women and their kids. I then found the title for my novel, Beşi bir yerde. 3 words meaning 5 of them together. But this was a very common generic title. So I needed to find another one. While dealing with this dilemma, I found the answer in a jewelry shop. I was there to pick up a chain that was being repaired. Some people were shopping for presents for a bride-to-be. The shopkeeper was showing them some choices. The young man was objecting, saying that these were the very old-fashioned jewelry. But the shopkeeper explained, this beşi bir yerde is always thought of as something that will guarantee a bride's future. Beşi bir yerde is a name of a special gold coin given to the bride as a wedding present. They are like an investment that will ensure her financial security. So the title, now 3 words together, Beşi bir yerde, became a play on words. In effect, I had killed 2 birds with 1 stone. This title means both 5 of them together and security. Finally, I wrote my novel and it has been published in 2020. I feel happy that I completed my self-appointed responsibility. Since then, I have received very positive feedback for this book too. People are congratulating me for writing about a subject that wasn't mentioned or addressed anywhere. I was named Best Writer of 2020 of Bursa, the Turkish city I live in, and as a result of this novel. I can see from these responses that people expect writers to address issues that can benefit everyone. Some writers feel these expectations and accept this responsibility. Of course, it is a writer's choice. As a final words that I can say that people may choose to have this responsibility or not to have it. But I am one of those writers to choose that I am responsible towards my society. I also love to read this type of books. I enjoy reading this kind of books, and these books forced me to seriously think even while I'm enjoying the story. That's all I can tell you through my own experiences in life and from my writing novel responsibility stories. I am open to your questions, and before I finish my talk, I thank you all for giving me the opportunity to talk about my ideas on this subject. I thank the Indian Society for the promotion of English language and literature with my deepest respect, and thank you all the organizers. Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am. It was pleasure have you here, and you just shared some of the most sensitive areas that people don't touch upon. And definitely, as a writer, I do feel the biggest responsibility of a writer is to sensitize other people so that a better world can be imagined. And definitely, you have touched upon some of the most sensitive issues like that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wadud. That's true. We have to bring the very sensitive subjects to the readers. I certainly believe in that. That's our duty. Okay. Is there anybody that would like to ask me questions?
If you have any question and queries, please ask Muhsine Arda, ma'am.
Let me ask you a question, ma'am. When you were writing this particular novel on suicide, on disability, how emotionally exhausting it was to talk about that, live that life? Because for you to write something like that, you have to go through the whole experience. You have to make yourself believe that you are a part of that life, or somebody close to you has, gone through that.
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, believe me, writing these novels were very, very emotional for us. And sometimes it was so heavy, and I was myself in tears and crying over, and then shaking my head, and I was saying that, hey, watch out for your sanity, because these are the characters you created. And then actually it was a very happy feeling out of this sadness, because if a writer, I create this character and then still crying over it, it means that I really captured the emotions. And so I was kind of congratulating myself, because if I wasn't crying when I was writing about them, then they were really not nicely conveyed as a character. So it was really just touch and go kind of writing. No, they weren't. So I was deeply involved in them. And then sometimes for 2-3 days, I have to stop writing again, because it was emotionally affecting me very badly.
Sure.
But the good thing is that something came out very good. These books about suicide, usually people think that writers are writing in a romantic way and then encouraging the young people to commit suicide. No, that's true. There are some books like that. No, my book is actually telling that please do not commit suicide. And actually a very interesting thing happened. In a book fair, a woman came and suddenly asked me, why didn't you write this book 3 years before? And I was really shocked. And I said, what do you mean? I mean, this is the question that you are never expect to be asked. And she told me that actually one day something happened in her work, and then she left the work and went home and found her husband with another woman in bed, in their own bedroom. So there was a lot of yelling and kicking them out. She, on that instant, went to the kitchen and drank all these cleaning chemicals on that instant. But very luckily, a very noisy and curious neighbor heard a lot of banging doors and screaming, came to her house and found the door open and went inside and found her on the floor, and lots of foam is coming out of her mouth. So finally, she was saved after a long hospitalization term. And she said that I never forgot the eyes of my son in front of my, next to my bed, begging that mother, please don't die. So if I read your books 3 years ago, I would understand that how it affects for the leftover people. Then I would never ever do that stupid action. So that was interesting. So my book is really telling that as an outcome, please don't commit suicide. Life is better. Thank you.
Ablajim, about your second novel, Beshi Piri Arde, what response or review you have got regarding the family of disabled children?
Well, it is really in a very short time. It's now that only 6 months in the market, and I am getting a very, very good response. And but people are saying something interesting, that when they start reading, they cannot put it aside and they finish it in 2-3 days, although it's 344 pages. And so they read and they congratulate me, and then they say that from now on, they will never be able to just look at the disabled people and their mothers and fathers and pass. They will try to be kind and helpful, and nevertheless maybe push their politicians or their city officials to open nice little schools or some facilities to help these mothers. So I'm getting very positive response, and I hope that everything is going to be an eye-opening in this sense. And then when we are aware of the problem, and we can let the other people to be aware of it, and we can find some more solutions to help them. That's my priority, actually. Thank you.
Shaminaz madam, I would like to speak few words on this occasion.
Yes, sure.
Yeah. First, I would like to congratulate Muhsine Arda ma'am on writing such a burning topic, such topics which are very close to me, to my heart.
Anita ma'am, just a request, please, on your video.
Okay, ma'am. It is very close to my heart, because one of my friends has a disabled child, and when she shares whatever happens with her or has happened with her, that is always in my mind, because we are very close to each other. And when I heard you speaking about the mother, the experience of a mother of a disabled child, it touched me very much. One more thing about suicide. My cousin's sister died of suicide when I was very small, means about 6 or 7 years old. But I never forget that instant when she committed the suicide. And when I heard you speaking about these incidents and talking and taking the decision to write novels on such topics, I liked very much, and hats off to you to write on such topics. And I hope that such topics will be discussed in other novels also, through which you will show your social responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am Anita. Thank you very much. Yes. These are different and difficult subjects, but as you see, that they are very near to our lives, all of our life. That's true.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
And I thank you for all the listeners that who are writing comments. Thank you very much to them too. Yes.
Sure. Sure. Okay. Let's move on and allow me to invite our next speaker, who is going to be a part of this. Chairperson, Dr. Lieutenant Indrani MR. She is an assistant professor of English and associate NCC officer 1, Karnataka Artillery Battery, nodal officer for Community College, SBR Mahajana, first grade college, Mysuru, Karnataka. She has 18 years of teaching experience and her area of interest is travel literature and soft skills. Her PhD thesis is on Fair Forward Travelers, a reading of select travel narratives under the guidance of Vijay Keshadri, Director of Pandya Post-Graduation Center. She has worked on a minor research project under the college with potential for excellence grants on transgressing the reality, a study on women travel writings. She is also a soft skill trainer and facilitator for leadership and human resource development. She has published 4 articles in international journals and presented 10 papers at different levels and has attended 46 delivered hundreds of lectures as a resource person and chief guest on various topics in English literature, English language, enhancement skills, NCC, various competitive exams, and motivational lectures for youth. She has organized 11 international peace conferences to commemorate Hiroshima and Nagasaki Day on 6th and 9th August every year to disseminate peace and harmony in young men. After this long list of her achievements, I am pretty excited and honored to invite our chairperson, Dr. Lieutenant Indrani MR.
Just a request before Indrani ma'am gives her comment. Let us take some questions which are in the chat box, like by Dr. Meenakshi Kulkarni. When she was writing her second novel, it must have been very mentally exhausting. And did she come across some mothers who wanted to hide the disability of her child? When you were writing the second novel, have you come across some mothers who hide the disability of their child?
There is a little bit interference with the sound. And
Dr. Shobharani, please mute yourself. Dr. Shobharani, please mute yourself. Right.
Thank you. Thank you. If I understood, if I heard the right thing that about some mothers hiding their disabled kids, is that the question, Dr. Sharmenas?
Yes.
Did I hear right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, I do. Yes, I did very much. Even in Bursa, a friend of mine's brother was very severely disabled in 1969. So I am talking 68, 69, and I never knew about this brother. But one day I went to their house, and then in the shack that in the garden, which normally people keep their coals and wood for winter, there was a sound. And I excuse my saying that I thought that maybe they have got a cow or a sheep there. So I said, there's some voice, some noises coming. And then she was very embarrassed. And she said, no, there's somebody there. And this was, later on I learned that her brother, but because He was very strong physically, and at that time there were no diapers, no other amenities that they make the life easier to look after these kids. And so they were keeping the boy in the shack. That was unbelievable. And I do not remember what happened to him. But another one that in my childhood, again, my father brought another disabled person in front of our house every day for 2-3 hours, because this was another disabled boy who was really kept always in the basement of their houses. And my father found out about this boy, and the family was very, very embarrassed of this boy, and they were not letting the child to get out of the sunshine. So to 2-3 hours to the sunshine, and then made sit on our staircase. It was impossible to take him inside because he was always, unfortunately, very dirty. But then, as much as possible, my mother was changing his clothes, and we were trying to feed him and then trying to talk to him. So, yes, I mean, I know personally two people from my childhood and from my youth that one was kept in the basement of the house, and the other one was in the shack that they're supposed to keep the woods and coal for the house. But nowadays, thank God, the life has changed a little bit. And thanks really, I mean, the people who invented these nappies and everything, the life became kind of easier for the mothers with the disabled children, so that they can really use these nappies, and of course washing machines are very common now that they can wash the clothes and everything. And thank God, in some countries the governments are taking care of them, but in other countries still we need to push the politicians to establish some institutions for this disabled children, and these institutions should be really under very, very strict control, because these children should be treated always with love and with care. And most of the mothers cannot go to these institutions because of the fear that they are now, because of the cameras, are going to be very open in public, because they are really undressed and washed by just hosing the water with them with the hose. So really they should be institutions with professionally dedicated people should be working in those places, and mothers should be the observance of the situations there.
There is another question by Dr. Manisha.
Yes, Dr. Manisha?
Ma'am, I just want to ask that how can people avoid the feeling of embarrassment which comes naturally on meeting someone instantly having a certain disability? People are uncomfortable when we meet someone with any kind of disability. I myself had an experience a few days back. I went to someone's house and unknowingly, and I saw that the person, that lady, was her.
Hello? Your voice is gone, Dr. Manisha.
Means she has met a person, she went to a house in where she has met a,
Yes.
there was a disabled
Yes.
child which family was hiding.
Yes, and that's true. This happens to all of us, and then how to get over this embarrassment is the question. Yes, number one is that we should start talking about these subjects very openly. So, especially, I think the responsibility is on the shoulder of us that who do not have a child or relative with disability. So it means that we are objective, and we start educating ourselves first that these disabled people are also just like us, but with a severe illness or severe situation in their health. If we start thinking, and if we start just treating them as a normal person, especially the ones that who can talk to us, and instead of pitying and trying to help them, and if we can look at their eyes with a loving way, looking at them and having eye contact and trying to make them understand that we keep them just as our equals, can be helping them. So to be able to do this, we have to educate ourselves in our private houses. We have to give the signals to our own brains that no, I am not going to be embarrassed. No, I am not going to be discriminating. No, I am not going to be shocked when I see a disabled person. Two legs, and my brain is sending the right commands to my mouth and my ears, that I hear them, I see them, and I can talk freely. So yes, getting out of this embarrassment, maybe also to learn smile. Most of us do not know how to smile in life. It's very interesting, but most of the people always think about their unhappy memories. Yes, we do have lots of problems. We do have lots of bad memories, but we have to have educate ourselves to find a joy in life. And when we find the joy in life, we become much more positive person. And if we are positive, then we are positive towards the other people. If I am positive that a disabled person is not an embarrassing person to me, then I can convey this relaxed feelings and relaxed mind to them. As much as I can say on this subject, I'm not quite sure that I answered your question rightly, but as long as I believe that as long as we are aware of the problem, and if we say, all right, I am going to be positive about it, and I will not be embarrassed, I will not be pitying the person, we will manage that, not to be embarrassed. That is my instant answer to you all. Thank you, Dr. Manisha.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions, Dr. Manisha?
Ma'am, actually, we don't take the things easily. The only thing
No.
is that we feel pity on the person. We don't
Yes.
take it like us.
Yes.
We don't
Yes.
try to fix it as we are.
Yes, that's what I am saying, that we have to forget about pitying them. That sense shouldn't be there. No, we do not pity them, but we can help them. We can help the mothers, we can help the disabled person or children, and if we accept them, they will feel the real love conveying from us to them. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. We have to treat them normally.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
question.
In my opinion, it is not easy to accept a disabled child for a mother, but she accepts because she is emotionally attached to her child, and when she takes this situation courageously, at that time she makes her child in such a way, she develops her child in such a way that he should not be pitied upon. And when such conditions are created by the mothers, the others also don't feel any pity for the child, and they take them as like them only, like themselves only, means like common human being, not as disabled people. I think it is up to the mother and the family members of the disabled people. Then the society will also change their views, and their points of view will be changed upon looking at those children who are disabled, when they are treated without any pity, and when the family members feel happy with them, when they show honor towards them, when they feel proud of their children while growing them up, and then this type of condition, this type of things will be eradicated from the society. This is my opinion.
That's very true, dear Ma'am Anita. That's very true. It depends on the mothers, and I think that maybe 95% of mothers accept this in that way, and but society is also pushing them aside sometimes. So, for example, in some societies, a mother of a disabled child, although disability can come out of one chromosome, which could be coming from the father's side or mother's side, it doesn't matter, or just a unpleasant play of the biology, the mothers generally feel very guilty, and they feel that they are guilty because they have a disabled child, which has got nothing to do. So in general, if we, in our schools, in educational systems, and with any social media, if we try to create that, educate the people that disability and having a disabled child is not a guilt of a mother, of a father, not a guilt, unless I will say one exception to that. In some excuse me, in some societies, very, very close relatives get married, and then the guilt is really in their family or upbringings, because that is one reason for some of the disabled kids. But apart from it, any disability, let's say for brain damaged, because that the child couldn't get enough oxygen during the birth, or any child with Down syndrome, or any child with autism, nobody knows the reasons. There's an Hurley syndrome, nobody knows the reasons. There is a cystic fibrosis, nobody knows the reasons. So we should really repeat a lot of times at schools, at social media, that disability is nothing that you can say something on it, and it is not a guilt on the mother's and on the father's side or on the family side. But of course, saying all these now, that for some disabilities the reasons are known, and so I even in my book, at the end of the book, I wrote an essay and I said, well, let's come from the novel to the daytime, to today. And I said, young couples, please consult your doctors before you decide to become a mother and father, because now there is a science, there is a genealogy. They can work on your genes, and they can see that if you are carrying a chromosome that, or a gene that, which can affect your the pregnancy starts, they should really always consult their doctors. And in some pregnancies, of course, the disabilities are already diagnosed. Then, in most of the societies, the mothers are given the choice of abortion. Well, I cannot recommend have abortion or not to have abortion. It is a very, very personal choice of the mothers and fathers. But they do have these choices. They do have these choices. So I think the best thing is to avoid any future problems. Number one, the young couples should really consult their doctors first. And if all that fails, then we have to make them understand that this is not their guilt. This is not their guilt. And we should be doing personally and society-wise and government-wise anything to help them. Anything to help them, because they are not only mothers or fathers' responsibility, they are our responsibility, as the healthy children's education is the problem of our society, of our problems. So if we are expecting better roads to go to another city, we should expect better institutions to help to these mothers, because normally a mother never ever thinks that her child is going to die. But these mothers non-stop think about their children's dying, because they are so afraid that what will happen to them when they die. That is the it really gives me a very sadness to think about this problem. This is the biggest problem. This is the biggest problem. That's why we have to raise awareness about these mothers' problems, that we have to push really our societies to have very good controlled and excellent institutions for disabled children and kids. This is a very difficult subject to talk.
If the organizers permit, I want to share something, if the organizers permit.
Dr. Shaminas?
Yes, sure.
Yeah. First of all, I will really want to thank Muhsine Arda ma'am for this very relevant topic, because I'm teaching in a university where these handicapped and the normal people study together. And you said that the government should do something. Over here in India, we have a Ministry of Viklangan Shakhtikaran Vibhag. And over here, I'm teaching in Lucknow, and in this university, it is governed by this department. And over here, we have students visually impaired, students who are deaf and dumb, and then those who are handicapped. And our government has coined this term Divyang for this handicapped people, so that they don't feel humiliated. And working over here, I mean, it just opened my eyes, and I mean, what all you said, I can just understand that and empathize with them, because over here, I mean, I can see the blind people, I mean, how they mingle with the normal people, and then the deaf and the dumb. And now I can understand and communicate with them in very freely. I mean, I can understand the sign language, and over here, these Divyangs, or you can say handicaps, over here in my university, education is free of cost, then fooding and lodging is free of cost over here, and the normal children, I mean, studying with them, they can understand their problems, and it's really an eye-opener, and I think that this is happening over here in India.
Oh, thank you very much for this information, Ma'am Kanu. And it is very, very important, and I congratulate your city and your university for doing that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Actually, sometimes putting ourselves into the disabled people's shoes is a great way to understand that how they manage. And in my childhood, my father made me to cover my eyes and to blind myself and to walk in the room. And of course, he moved the chairs and coffee tables in the wrong place, and I really fell down on them. So I understood what does that mean to be a blind person. So this was a really good teaching to me that, hey, watch out.
I mean,
And
yeah. And ma'am, in my university, we have ramps from the ground floor to the fourth floor, and the tiles are such that if the blind people walk on it, they will understand which way they have to.
Exactly. Maybe my first teaching came from my childhood, that for about the blind people, because my father blinded me and then made me understand that my friend was crippled, but I could be also a blind person, another disabled person. When somebody approached me to read my first book, Tears of Suicide for the Blind People's Society, I gave the rights. No money asked from my part, and no money was asked from the person that who read it. So my first novel is available for the blind people. It has been read on the cassette or whatever you call it in the system. So in the blind people's library, they can reach to my book and find it. But it is always nice to trying to really empathy, trying to establish an empathy with their disabilities.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean,
Yeah.
that is
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you,
very
ma'am, for sensitizing us about these issues. And definitely, we need to be sensitive enough to understand what trauma they are going through. And especially when you are referring to them, it's better to use the terms like differently abled or especially abled instead of calling them handicapped or crippled. And the second thing is, if somebody is not able to see, somebody is blind, so instead of telling that person that you are blind, it's better to say you are visually challenged. Anybody can be challenged, and they are challenged. And it was a very good deliberation, and all the very best for the future endeavors that you do have. And it was a pleasure having you here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shahmenaz. I thank you, Dr. Idrani, Dr. Wadud, yourself, and Regalata.
Thank you, everyone. Now, it's the time is up, so I request Indrani to give your insight about the lecture.
Definitely, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, it was a wonderful deliberation, and the way you actually expressed was amazing, ma'am. It mesmerized me. Only when we have that close contact with those people and your case studies, what is given, that actually is a wonderful way of bringing the reality in the form of word, ma'am. So congratulations, and hope your talk, I have no words to comment on it. It is only compliments and congratulating for a wonderful deliberation, ma'am. It is the way you actually started off with me, myself, okay, and finding out that we never experience that freedom while executing the things unless we experience it. So that was well put across, ma'am. To explore about the subject and to speak about it, we need to ask, we need to read, we need to practice. That was well presented over here. Ma'am, and as you said, it was a good writer, should always have, should be a good, an excellent observer, where you give an example of nurturing a seed when it grows, okay? So as it grows in such a way that it is a shelter to people, and each and everything teaches us something, that the way our brain, like the thoughts raise in our ideas, it raises in our brain of a writer, and then it comes out in the form of art, in the form of art. That was like explained, ma'am. I actually loved the presentation, and probably all the other members, delegates over here in this platform have definitely enriched and got the insightful of what actually you said. But it is always that you're right, the responsibility lies on a person where when we write something. It is a great social responsibility which we have to definitely nourish, to transmit that legacy, to transmit that legacy to the reader. And if there is no positive impact on the reader, it is really no use of writing something. So it is the writer's obligation and the responsibility, which as a writer you have put it across in an excellent way, ma'am. So thank you so much for that. And the examples what you gave, it could be the Tale of Two Cities, it could be Anna Karenina, it could be, or the American writer who has given that about the black women, where it was an eye-opener, as you said. Definitely, it is our greatest responsibility to make the readers to stick on to what actually the reality we are speaking about. So we always use that statement, pen is mightier than sword, isn't it, ma'am? So it is, I feel that yes, it is, pen is mightier than sword, and the way it has to be used, it should be used in a very meaningful way and in a very constructive way, so that the productivity or the progressiveness which we wish the audience should accept, so that is justified, and only when it reaches to the audience. So it is a common saying where we see that we as literary professors, when we speak, it actually speaks about it, that a great is on the shoulders of the writer to that or the urge to express a subject to the reader. There should be some objectivity. So it is my observation on it, ma'am, where it speaks about it, that the detailed way, the way the ideas, the thoughts, the feelings and emotions are valued in our writing. And instead of shifting that it is just for the sake of writing we are writing. It would always be better that we do take it as a great responsibility, where the values of an human being is valued in the form of writing. So where certain things are definitely we can explain it, but there are many things which we are unable to explain. So the explaining the unexplained things itself is a great challenge, where we sensitize these things, and it is a great task for all of us. It gives me immense pleasure to listen to you, as well as to speak to the audience who has given this platform for me to express few things on what do I feel as a social responsibility of a writer. And as a writer, yes, we have great responsibilities to speak about those insensitivities where impossible things can also be made it as possible through our writing, and it should be placed before a reader. The thing is that we all feel for every emotional things, and today's platform is all women-oriented one, and we feel those emotion, affection, okay, empathy, sympathy, all these things, we know it in a very close encounter. I really don't want the men to be offended over here in the group, but yet I just feel it that, yes, we have known the world with all these multiple tasking ways, where it was, I could see the tears when you were expressing about these people, where you met those suicidal tendency people, where only 3 were able to justify themselves and to give away those honest views. And when that honesty is not there in expressing our views, we have to categorize our writing pattern in different ways, where literature speaks about it, that it is nothing but what it speaks about the life, and we are reflecting the society. Okay. It is considered to be the mirror of the society, which reflects the image of the time in which it was created. When we speak about time is important, and every minute when we speak, every emotion is important, and we do fly and flow along with those emotions. And the most essential things which includes is the responsibility to write well in thinking, using a proper thoughts, find out about things which could really reach to the audience. Yes, of course, we do write for our pleasure. Even one simple sentence which actually comes out from my heart and mind, okay, it is for the sake of heart, and for the sake of heart for the heart's sake. So it is true that the responsibilities which we have on us is really vast, and we have to be justful in doing this. So when we speak about these things and the contribution what we can give over here, so dating back, I just quoted, like I have a few points which I wish to share it among these enlightened group, is that literature speaks about so many, like in the past, historical views. When we take it the comedy of humor based on the ancient philosophical theory, of which speaks about Johnson's time. And we also know it is followed by the comedy of manners, which represents the complex and sophisticated code of behavior current in fashionable circles of society, where appearance count for more than true moral character. So all these things, as it is, as the professors of literature, English language, we have many such responsibilities to go ahead with that. So I would actually wish to point out few important things on it, that how writing usually revolves around all those interviews where all mixed and cluttered emotions expressed in art form. Should we respect it? So my answer is yes. Any such piece of writing should be respected. Why? Because it is from the heart, from the brain, where the words which have been designed to give it across, it might be pleasing me, but it is true that it should please even the audience too. So when it actually reaches to the audience or the reader, it is not that whatever we write should reach to all those hundreds and thousands of readers. It is not so important. According to me, I feel that it should always be, even if one person has been inspired, has been felt that this particular
Your voice is
year to
down.
my art. So that is what during the special. I'm sorry. So how important it is, even out of 100, if it reaches very few, but definitely it has reached a heart. So that we have to feel very comfortable with it, that it has reached a heart. So here, it is a self-interested cynicism, the characters being masked by decorous pretense, where we do have these writings which could be for the purpose of enriching the knowledge, along with that expressing ourselves in the form of words, which actually could give a new enlightening mode for a reader. So these are the responsibilities when I can, we know what are those responsibilities. But when we sit for writing, I don't think that these, let me write it only for the sake of the reader. It is that our emotions, our words, our thoughts, our thinking, all this come on in the way of colorful ways that I start appreciating my words, my imagination. So when we speak about it, it could be in the form of prose pieces or non-fiction writing that presents and explains the idea, or that tells about the real and reality of people, places, objects, events, or emotions and feelings which are highly respected. So when it comes on, it need not be that it is only in the form of poetry we have to come across, or it need not be the non-fiction prose pieces, or it need not be a short story. Anything, a piece which actually runs in your mind, comes in the form of art, I think that is highly respected. So a responsibility of a writer is that we should always see to that, not in a judgmental way, as Professor Muhsine said, that it is not that we need not be judgmental about whatever has been written, but it can be a part that somewhere it should reach a heart. The short stories, when we take it for that matter, like work of a fiction that is usually written, often is in a narrative format. So anything, we talk so much, we articulate things, and when we talk, it is in the form of all those narrative style, descriptive style, reflexive.
Thank you so much.
Writing about a short story where, sorry. So one thing what we have to identify is that it depends on the mood rather than the plot. Okay, so with these things, the centuries have passed, but the ideas, emotions, and thoughts have not actually come to an end. It is always the new values replace the old ones and shape the literature of which has overtaken. Where a social responsibility is something, practicing of certain things in a justful way, giving the audience that what is required, because people like me search for many answers. Okay, the questions which are left unanswered, we start searching it out. So even writing, any of that piece of writing can always be an answer to many such questions. So all these aspects are highly appreciated, and my friends, professors over here, probably we have those blockages in our mind that whether to write, not to write, whether it is accepted or not accepted. No, according
Thank you so much.
Definitely the others also, the readers also start appreciating it only because that there is the theme of it is reaching out to the hearts of people. So when it comes to these things, the ideas and the thoughts, okay, it is the aesthetic value which should not be a confused one, but it should be highly appreciated because it is the spheres of life. By these words, I thank the ISPIL group I thank Dr. Shaminaz ma'am, a wonderful writer who has actually conveyed these things, and on the talk I've been able to, okay, thank you. And I thank Professor Ghanshyam sir for introducing me to Einstein, because this is one which I have started analyzing what I am, and as you said, not judgmental, but it is a way to reach out to the audience, and how far we reach it out, it is through our emotion, it is through our feelings and writing which has been brought across. So within this short moment which you have given, I think I have expressed my views on it, and congratulations to the guest speaker. It was well deliberated, and congratulations to the coordinators for creating such a wonderful platform to like-minded academicians to be on this platform, to know many more things which we have untouched on it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Indrani.
Thanks to Jyoti ma'am also, and you all are. Ma'am went on telling, we are sisters. Yes, it is. We have started with a good relationship which will long live with all these excellent deliberations. And I thank each one of you all for your patience listening, hearing, and for the time you have given. And thanks for wonderful speech which was given.
Thank you so much, Dr. Indrani. Let us move.
Thank you so much. And I express my immense gratitude.
Let us move towards a vote of thanks by Dr. Ragalata Reddy.
I would like to thank to all the listeners. Thank
I
you
consider it a great privilege to propose a vote of thanks to all dignitaries who have witnessed it as a memorable and successful event. Today my words are not enough to express the gratitude. On behalf of ISPAN, I would like to thank Mrs. Muhsine Arda ma'am for your very thought-provoking and interesting address. I extend a really hearty vote of thanks to our webinar keynote speaker, Ms. Muhsine Arda ma'am, for visiting and enlightening us with your knowledge. Today's webinar was full of knowledge and interesting things. It gave deep insights into the topic and also revealed some interesting facts. Today we had an opportunity to hear your thoughts on different arenas, and this will surely be going to encourage us in our future events, ma'am. Thank you so much. And
thank you very much. Thank you. I thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Bushra Madhu, ma'am, for your wonderful thought-provoking questions as well as enriching questions. Thank you, ma'am, once again. And my special thanks to our chairperson, ma'am, Dr. Lieutenant Indrani Emma, for all your wonderful words of wisdom that radiated a source of energy within us. Thank you, ma'am. Once again, thank you. And a special thanks to the organizing committee and the organizer, Dr. Shaminaz Banu, ma'am, for her unflinching support and coordination. No words are sufficient for her hard work and perseverance behind this conference. Thank you. Thanks a lot, ma'am.
Thank you.
And thanks to Dr. Ghanshyam sir, who is the founder and general secretary of our ISPEL, to enhance our knowledge by inviting giant personalities to this wonderful platform. Simply, I can say that sir is unseen line on our national emblem. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And my heartfelt thanks to our participants, active participation and their enthusiasm in asking questions. Thanks all the participants for your patience and everything, and your thought-provoking questions especially. And everyone got a good time today, and everyone enjoyed the session. And I also wish to express my gratitude to Mr. Pramod Dengle sir for his creativity in making the flyer very impressive. And the last, I may like to express our sincere thanks to Mr. Nurul Huda sir, who has diligently made this event success by providing the certificates. Now I would like to invite Mr. Nurul Huda sir to present the certificates to the dignitaries.
Ragalata, Ragalata, just want to interrupt you. Actually, certificate is made by Dr. Pramod Dingle and Nurul will display.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. Nurul sir.
So, Nurul, are you ready with the certificates? Nurul?
Nurul sir, over to you.
Yes, Nurul is there with the certificates. Nurul, I request you to please display the certificates.
Hope it is visible now, ma'am. Is this visible, ma'am?
No.
Very visible, yes.
You are audible, sir.
You
You are audible and it is visible.
Okay.
Not visible.
So this is for Dr. Muhsine ma'am for being the keynote speaker. Thank you,
Dr.
ma'am.
Muhsine Arda ma'am, this is a token. This is a token of love from India to Turkey, and this is
Thank you.
this is a love. This is our love for you, and this is for Dr. Bushra Wadood for wonderfully conducting this session.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Shamanaz.
Thank you very much. I'm very much touched and honored.
Thank you, ma'am.
Here.
This certificate
Thank
is
you.
for Lieutenant in event. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Shamanaz,
Yes, sir.
can I present one more thing?
Yes, sir. But
If you are,
yes,
if
sir.
you are permitting me.
Yes, sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Jyoti Patil ma'am is there, who was the convener in the month of January. She conducted all the event in such a great way. So we need to thank her, and ISPEL would love to present this certificate for not only facilitating to elevate the people, but also to facilitate to elevate the entire community and the society. So this certificate goes to Dr. Jyoti Patil, the principal of Renuka College, Nagpur, in appreciation and recognition to the outstanding dedication as event 21. Thank you very much, Jyoti Patil ma'am.
Oh my God, sir! This is a pleasant surprise, and that excellent session we had. We are getting so much of